Incredible what just happened to Lewis Hamilton in Bahrain. The 7-time world champion faces one of his toughest challenges since signing with Ferrari. What's going on with the SF-25? Why is it slower than a rookie? Stay here because what I'm about to tell you hasn't been told to you by anyone. Lewis Hamilton arrived at the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix hoping to start a new chapter with Ferrari with a bang. Expectations were high. New parts, a major redesign of the car, and a golden opportunity to prove that his move to the Scuderia was more than just a media-driven decision. In the first free practice session, Hamilton showed promising signs. He finished in third place, less than 0.6 of a second behind Lando Norris, who led the standings with a McLaren that's running like a Swiss watch. The results seemed encouraging, but behind the stopwatch lay a much more complex reality. The real contrast emerged when the long runs were analyzed. While Hamilton used the new aerodynamic package, the other Ferrari on track was driven by Dino Beganovic, a rookie who was driving an older version of the car. Logic dictated that Hamilton, with the latest technical developments, should have been considerably faster. However, the result was the opposite. Beganovic was half a second per lap faster in the long stint. Half a second per lap in comparable conditions. That set off alarm bells in the red garage. What was worrying wasn't just the difference, but the context. Hamilton was using the car with which Ferrari hopes to close in on Red Bull and McLaren, while the Swedish rookie was simply repeating what was already familiar. This result not only raised doubts about the performance of the new package, but also called into question the team's technical direction. The second free practice confirmed that the situation was no mirage. In nighttime conditions similar to those of the race, Hamilton not only lost pace but also positions. He finished 8th, more than a second behind Oscar Piastri, the fastest in the session. But the most serious thing was that his own teammate Charles Leclerc finished 4th, half a second ahead. This indicates that it's not the car itself that's failing, but perhaps Hamilton's specific setup, or his adaptation to this new SF-25. While Leclerc seems to be getting more out of the package, Hamilton still can't find that balance between rear-end stability and cornering speed. And that, in such a tight championship, can cost not tenths of a second, but entire races. In short, what seemed like a promising start ended up revealing the dark sides of a Ferrari that's still under construction, and of a Hamilton who, for now, hasn't been able to translate his experience into consistent results. Is he still adapting? Or is the car not responding to his style? That's the question that lingers after this Friday in Bahrain. Ferrari arrived in Bahrain with a clear mission: to turn around a season that began far below expectations. The SF-25 received its first major update package, and the goal was no small feat. These improvements weren't simply intended to iron out details, but rather to correct structural flaws that were preventing the car from performing competitively against McLaren and Red Bull. The centerpiece of this technical package was a completely redesigned floor design. It wasn't a simple tweak, but a reconstruction with multiple elements working in coordination. The new floor rails, the redesigned main body, and more refined side edges were designed to directly attack the SF-25's Achilles heel: aerodynamic instability, particularly at the rear of the car. This floor has a clear function: to better channel airflow under the car to more effectively feed the rear diffuser. And in theory, that translates into more downforce. More downforce means greater grip, more driver confidence, and less unexpected sliding in corners. It's exactly what Lewis Hamilton has been asking for since the start of the season. But Ferrari didn't stop there. Along with this floor redesign, a new diffuser was also introduced, optimized to work in conjunction with the new airflow. A small winglet was added to the rear wing pillar, a detail that is almost invisible to the naked eye, but can make a difference in the car's overall aerodynamic efficiency. The key behind these parts is a very clear philosophy: allowing the SF-25 to run closer to the ground without compromising stability. And this is where Hamilton comes in. The British driver has always preferred cars with a low, rigid setup. At Mercedes, that recipe made him a champion. But with Ferrari until now, every attempt to lower the car ended up generating balance problems, bouncing, and, in the worst cases, technical penalties. The clearest example was in China, where he was disqualified for excessive wear on the underbody. That incident forced Ferrari to rethink everything. What they brought to Bahrain is precisely intended to prevent that from happening again. Hamilton can drive at the height he desires without destroying the underbody of the car or compromising his race pace. However, implementing these improvements is not an automatic process. It requires fine-tuning, hours of simulation, and above all, adaptation on the track. And that process, at least for now, does not seem to have yielded the leap in quality Ferrari had hoped for. The pieces are there, the theory is sound, but the execution still shows cracks. What's clear is that Ferrari has gambled heavily and early this season. Now it remains to be seen whether these changes are the beginning of a recovery or just a temporary fix that doesn't address the underlying problems. Lewis Hamilton, accustomed to the spotlight and pressure, struck a cautiously optimistic tone when asked about the performance of Ferrari's new technical package. Despite the track times, which at first glance may seem disappointing, the Briton expressed appreciation for the team's efforts and was convinced that the improvements were moving in the right direction. His words reflected more of a long-term view than an immediate reaction to Friday's result. "I'm not really feeling a huge amount of issues, just a general lack of performance in terms of pace, which we hope we can improve this weekend," Hamilton said before practice. After the sessions, his speech remained along the same lines. "The updates are definitely working. A big thank you to everyone back home working so hard to bring the updates. It's never easy." These kinds of statements are no coincidence. Hamilton knows he's in a delicate phase with Ferrari. It's his first year with the Scuderia, and any direct criticism could be interpreted as an internal fracture. Therefore, his message is laced with diplomacy, but it also reveals a truth. Although the technical improvements are noticeable, they are not yet enough to compete with the leading teams. From the team's side, the tone was equally measured. Jerome D'Ambrosio, Ferrari's current deputy team principal, was clear in his quest to temper any undue enthusiasm. According to him, this package is not a revolution, but rather a further step in the development plan outlined since the preseason. "We don't expect this package to completely change the car's performance. It's a progressive improvement, not a total redesign. Every tenth of a second gain counts." These statements are key to understanding the team's current situation. Ferrari doesn't want to sell an illusion that it can't sustain. The improvement is real, but not large enough to change the balance of power within the paddock. Added to this is the media pressure and the constant comparison with Charles Leclerc, who was half a second faster than Hamilton in the second practice session. Ferrari also knows it's racing against the clock. McLaren has already pulled away with a 76-point lead in the Constructors' Championship, and Red Bull, despite its ups and downs, remains the team to beat. The improvements in Bahrain were only the first phase. A second, even more aggressive package is expected in Miami. But everything will depend on whether the current components can be maximized and translated into immediate results. Overall, both the driver and the team are aligned on the message. There is progress, but it's not definitive. The tone is one of patience, although Formula One rarely affords that luxury. And while the clock is ticking, what is a cautious discourse today could become an urgent diagnosis tomorrow if the results don't arrive. At this point in the weekend, the signs are clear. Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton are at a turning point. The 2025 season has only just begun, but early mistakes and a lack of results are already taking their toll. After 3 Grands Prix, McLaren has opened a 76-point gap in the Constructors' Championship. And in modern Formula One, where technical development is continuous but every tenth of a point counts, making up ground isn't impossible, but it does require perfect execution from now on. The big problem for Ferrari isn't just that McLaren and Red Bull are faster. It's that they're faster in key areas where Ferrari still shows weaknesses. In McLaren's case, its strength lies in the slow and medium corners, where race pace is most determined. This is where Oscar Piastri in Bahrain practice gained almost a second per lap on Hamilton during the long stints. That's a brutal difference. And although Ferrari has improved in top speed, that gain on the straight line doesn't offset the losses in technical sections. If the car isn't fast in corners, it can't protect the tires. If it doesn't protect the tires, they degrade faster. And if they degrade faster, they inevitably lose positions. It's a chain of consequences that Ferrari has yet to break, not even with the new aerodynamic package. The situation is even more complex for Hamilton. On an individual level, his results are below expectations. He's not only behind McLaren and Red Bull, but also behind his teammate Charles Leclerc, who has shown a better understanding of the SF-25 with the new parts. The gap in FP2 was half a second, an eternity in Formula One. If that trend continues, the narrative could quickly shift from Hamilton leading Ferrari's development to Hamilton still hasn't adapted. And that would be dangerous for everyone. Ferrari needs a clear technical leader, someone to set the course. If Hamilton fails to assume that role, the team could be caught between two driving and development philosophies that don't quite converge. As for the championship, the threat is real. If the gap isn't closed at least partially in Bahrain, the coming rounds could become an uphill battle with no finish. Miami will be key as Ferrari promises a more aggressive package there. But if the Bahraini car doesn't serve as a solid foundation, the risk of repeating the mistakes of previous years is high. Updates that don't work, frustrated drivers, and a season that ends before reaching Europe. Ferrari and Hamilton are against the clock. What they do this weekend in Bahrain won't just determine the outcome of one race. It will determine whether this joint project has a solid foundation to compete in 2025, or if it will be another transitional year disguised as hope. The talent is there. The tools are there. The question is whether they will know how to use them in time. The weekend in Bahrain hasn't yet spoken its last word, but it has already raised the most important questions. Can Ferrari find the right balance in the SF-25 setup to truly harness the potential of its new technical package? Can Hamilton regain his confidence and extract the performance that, until now, seems hidden beneath layers of adjustments and aerodynamic details? The third free practice will be the last opportunity to fine-tune each component before qualifying. This isn't just about fighting for a good grid position, but also about proving that factory work, simulations, and long hours in the wind tunnel can turn into a real advantage under the floodlights of the secure circuit. Ferrari needs answers, and they need them now. The Bahrain package has left mixed signals. On the one hand, there's a perceived improvement in the car's overall stability, especially in fast corners. On the other, there's a persistent lack of pure performance, that grip, in slow corners that McLaren seems to have mastered perfectly. The pressure is on the engineers, yes, but also on Hamilton, who must find his confidence with a car that still doesn't respond as he expects. The key may lie in the details. In small suspension adjustments, in engine maps, in the way tire temperatures are managed on a track that can reach 50 degrees. The margin for error is minimal. But if they find a way, even a small advance in qualifying could completely change the narrative of the weekend. On a strategic level, there's also a lot at stake. In the race, tire management will be as important as pure speed. The SF-25's new tread promises greater aerodynamic efficiency, but if that doesn't translate into less degradation, the pace will drop again after the first few laps. Ferrari needs a car that's not just fast on a single lap, but also consistent, especially against rivals like McLaren, who are maximizing every stint. On the immediate horizon is Miami, where an even more ambitious package will arrive. But none of that will be worth it if concrete results aren't achieved in Bahrain. This round is the foundation on which the next step will be built. If Hamilton and Ferrari manage to finish in the top 5, if they close the gap to the leaders, they can go into the next race with real momentum, not just promises. What's at stake isn't just a race. It's the validation of a strategy, an alliance, and a promise. Hamilton didn't come to Ferrari to score sporadic podium finishes. He came to compete, to win, to make history. The clock is ticking. And Bahrain, although it's only the 4th race of the year, is already shaping up to be one of those moments when the season could begin to be defined.